My name is Austin Bennett. I'm a quiet 42-year-old engineer from Lake Hill, Colorado. Most of my life, I stayed out of the spotlight, kept my head down, worked hard, believed that loyalty and commitment were enough to keep a marriage strong. I wasn't the guy to make a scene or chase after every whim. I was steady, predictable. I thought that was what being a good husband meant. My wife, Emily, was nothing like me. She had this glow about her, this magnetic energy that pulled people in wherever she went. Charismatic, spontaneous, full of stories and laughter. The kind of person who would get free coffees just because the barista liked her smile, or who could walk into any room and somehow know everyone's name by the end of the night. We'd been married for 8 years, and for most of that time, I thought we were solid. Different, sure, but strong in the ways that mattered. Looking back, I realize how badly I wanted to believe that. It was a Thursday evening in late September when it started, the moment the foundation of my life got its first tiny crack. I remember it clearly because the air had just started to carry that bite of early fall, and the sunset was turning the mountains in the distance into these glowing blue shadows. I was sitting in my truck, waiting for Emily outside the Lake Hill Mall. She had texted me half an hour earlier, saying she was wrapping up some errands and needed a ride because her car was giving her trouble again. When I saw her coming across the parking lot, her arms full of shopping bags, I smiled automatically. She looked beautiful, as she always did, long, chestnut hair tossed over one shoulder, denim jacket thrown casually over a flowy dress that swayed around her knees. She walked like someone who had never known insecurity a day in her life, like the world would always meet her with open arms. She reached the truck, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and opened the back door to dump her bags inside. That's when I saw it, the glint of something etched into the hood of her car, parked a few spots down. I squinted at it, my heart stumbling for a beat. There, clear as day, was a small heart scratched into the metallic paint. And inside it, a single letter, R. I pointed at it without thinking. Hey, what's that? Emily straightened up, flipping her hair over her shoulder to get a better look. For the tiniest fraction of a second, I saw it, a flash of something in her eyes. Surprise. Panic, maybe. But it disappeared so fast I almost convinced myself I imagined it. She laughed. That light, airy laugh that was so practiced it could have won awards. Oh, it's nothing. Some stupid joke from work, probably. Ryan's always screwing around with people's cars. She waved a hand dismissively, like it was the most ridiculous thing in the world to even bring it up. I forced a chuckle, pushing down the sudden, unwelcome feeling clawing at my gut. Seems kinda permanent for a joke, I said. Emily shrugged, already sliding into the passenger seat. He's an idiot. I'll yell at him tomorrow. Come on, let's go. I'm starving. I dropped it. Of course I did. What was I supposed to say? That I didn't believe her because her laugh had been half a second too quick? Because her voice had tightened just enough that it didn't sound quite like her? I climbed in and started the truck. The ride home was filled with the sound of Emily flipping through radio stations and humming along to a song she barely knew, while I kept one hand loosely on the steering wheel and the other clenched so tightly in my lap that my knuckles went white. I told myself not to be stupid. That I was being paranoid. That this woman, this beautiful, lively, complicated woman, loved me. She chose me. She said it all the time. Still, I couldn't stop glancing at her when I thought she wasn't looking. Couldn't stop wondering why her phone had been buzzing all evening at dinner 2 nights ago, and how she had turned it face down without reading a single message. Couldn't forget the way she had started wearing that new perfume a few weeks ago, something sweeter and heavier than what she used to like, the kind that lingered on my clothes after I hugged her. At the house, she climbed out of the truck and called out over her shoulder, "I'll start dinner. Can you grab the bags?" I watched her walk inside, that familiar little sway in her step that used to make me feel lucky, and now just made me feel something tighter, something heavier. As I gathered her bags from the back seat, I caught myself looking at her car again. The little heart scratched into the hood. The letter R. I thought about texting her brother Ryan, asking if he had done it. But the thought felt ridiculous, pathetic even. Besides, what was I hoping to hear? Some admission that would make me feel worse? I carried the bags inside, setting them down carefully by the kitchen counter. Emily was already halfway through chopping vegetables, the kitchen filled with the clatter of knives and cutting boards and the sizzling of something on the stove. She flashed me a quick smile over her shoulder, the kind of smile that had once been enough to chase every dark thought from my mind. But tonight, it wasn't. Tonight, it barely reached her eyes. Later, as we sat on the couch, eating dinner off our laps and watching some sitcom neither of us really paid attention to, I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. That it was nothing. That people did stupid stuff all the time, that work friends were weird, that there was no reason to feel this strange hollow ache in my chest. Emily laughed at something on the TV, tossing her head back the way she always did when she really found something funny. I smiled along with her, but it felt like a performance. Like I was playing a part in a life that had already shifted somehow, just a degree or two off-center, but enough that I could feel it. That night, lying in bed beside her, listening to the soft rise and fall of her breathing, I stared at the ceiling and thought about that tiny, stupid heart on the hood of her car. It was probably nothing. Emily said it was nothing. But once you notice the first crack, it's almost impossible not to see how deep it might run. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I lay there staring at the darkness, the soft whir of the ceiling fan spinning above us the only sound. Emily slept soundly next to me, curled on her side, one hand tucked beneath her cheek. She looked peaceful, innocent even. And for a moment, I hated myself for doubting her. I hated that a scratched letter on a car hood had wormed its way into my mind and made a home there. But no matter how many times I closed my eyes, no matter how much I tried to force my thoughts away, they kept coming back. Piece by piece. Moment by moment. All the things I had brushed off before. All the signs I had swallowed and ignored because I didn't want to see them. The late nights at work that hadn't used to exist. The weekend trips for corporate training that always popped up at the last minute, always too rushed for me to come along. The new friends she mentioned in passing but never introduced me to. The way her phone had become almost an extension of her hand, always within reach, always guarded. I remembered the perfume again, the new one she started wearing 2 months ago without saying anything. Emily used to let me pick her perfumes. She liked the soft, fresh scents, like clean linen or light florals. But this new one was different. Heavy. Sweet in a way that clung to the back of your throat. I asked her about it once, and she laughed, saying she got it as a sample at the mall and just wanted to try something new. It wasn't just the smell. It was the way she wore it. Like she was trying to leave a trail behind her. Another memory surfaced, sharper than the rest. About a month ago, we were rushing out the door to a family barbecue, and she had forgotten her wedding ring. I noticed halfway there, teasing her about it, and she laughed it off with a breezy, "It's just a piece of jewelry, babe." But later that night, when I went to grab something from her purse, there it was, her ring, tucked carefully inside a folded handkerchief. Not lost. Not forgotten. Hidden. At the time, I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe it caught on something, maybe it was uncomfortable. Stupid explanations. Easier explanations. Now, lying there with the fan humming and the night pressing down around me, those memories twisted together into something colder, heavier. A pattern I could no longer deny. It wasn't just one thing. It was everything. A slow, steady drip of things not adding up. Of changes she never explained. Of smiles that didn't reach her eyes and touches that felt a little too rehearsed. I turned onto my side, staring at her in the pale moonlight coming through the window. She looked so small, so familiar. And yet, the woman sleeping beside me felt like a stranger wearing Emily's skin. I tried to shake the feeling. Told myself I was being paranoid, jealous, stupid. That love meant trust, and trust meant giving her the benefit of the doubt. I repeated those words like a prayer until the clock glowed 3:14 a.m. in blocky green numbers. But even then, I knew the truth. Once you start connecting the dots, it's impossible to pretend they don't form a picture. The next morning, Emily moved around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She made coffee, flipped pancakes onto plates, kissed my cheek in that casual way she always had. And I smiled, played along, told her the pancakes were perfect. But a quiet distance had opened up between us. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and just chose to ignore it, the same way I had ignored the obvious for far too long. That weekend, she mentioned another business trip. San Diego this time. A leadership retreat, she said, tapping her phone with her finger while reading through the itinerary. She wore a tight black top and jeans that fit her a little too perfectly, the kind of outfit she usually saved for date nights. I told myself not to read into it. Told myself work events had gotten more casual. That maybe she just wanted to feel confident, to fit in. I nodded when she told me about it. Even helped her pack. Slipped one of her favorite novels into her bag when she wasn't looking. A stupid, small gesture, the kind of thing a husband does when he loves someone enough to want them to feel at home no matter where they are. That night, while she was upstairs showering, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Once. Twice. 3 times. It wasn't like me to snoop. I hated even thinking about it. But something about the way it buzzed and the way she always kept it locked in close to her, it felt like an invitation. Or a challenge. I reached for it, then pulled my hand back like it was burning hot. Sat there for a full minute, wrestling with myself. Finally, I stood up and walked away without touching it. If I had crossed that line, I didn't know if I'd be able to come back. When Emily came downstairs later, wrapped in a towel, she gave me a sweet, distracted smile and grabbed her phone without a word. Swiped it open with a thumbprint, thumb flying across the screen with practiced ease. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She typed something quickly, bit her bottom lip the way she always did when she was trying to be flirty, then set the phone face down again. And still, I said nothing. I kissed her good night. I curled around her in bed, fitting my body against hers like I had for 8 years. I listened to her breathing slow, listened to the crickets outside the window, listened to the silence of everything we weren't saying. I told myself loyalty meant something. That loving her meant trusting her. But deep down, another truth settled into my bones, cold and certain. Love is not blind. It just wears a mask for as long as it can. Eventually, the mask slips. And when it does, you can either keep pretending, or you can finally see. 3 days before Emily's so-called leadership retreat, it happened. The moment I stopped being able to lie to myself. It was a Sunday evening, one of those lazy ones where the sky turned purple and the whole world felt like it was stretching and yawning before the start of a new week. Emily said she had some last-minute shopping to do for her trip, just a couple things for the hotel, she had said, grabbing her purse and pecking me on the cheek with barely their lips. I offered to go with her, but she waved me off, saying it would be quicker if she went alone. I sat there after she left, the TV playing some rerun I wasn't even pretending to watch, and felt a familiar unease creeping up my spine. I told myself not to be the guy, the clingy, insecure husband who couldn't let his wife run errands without spiraling. I tried to shake it off, tried to focus on anything else. About an hour later, I noticed her old tablet sitting on the couch beside me, half buried under a throw blanket. Emily had a newer one she used all the time now, but this was her backup. I almost didn't think anything of it, until I caught the faint glow of the screen, still unlocked, still on. At first, I thought about just turning it off and setting it aside. But something about the Open Messenger app, the little preview of a conversation that flashed on the screen before it dimmed, snagged my attention. Hey beautiful. Can't wait to see you again. Red Heart R. The letter hit me like a fist to the chest. I sat there frozen for a second, my heart thudding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I told myself to stop. To put the tablet down. That there was still time to stay ignorant if I wanted to. But I didn't. Not this time. With shaking hands, I opened the Messenger app all the way. A conversation history unfolded in front of me, a thread that ran weeks deep. Little jokes, flirty comments, late-night promises. Plans made in code but not very well hidden. Things like, same place as last time? Miss your smile. God, you looked amazing in that dress yesterday. You make me forget everything else when I'm with you. And from Emily. Can't wait to get away again. Feels like I'm alive for the first time in years. Alive. That word again. As if our life together was some kind of death. I scrolled farther, my stomach sinking lower with every message. Photos too, nothing obscene, nothing that would get flagged, but enough. A selfie of Emily in a new dress, taken from a high angle like she was trying to look cute and casual. Another of 2 wine glasses clinking together in a familiar setting, the patio of Red Willow Inn. My mind flashed back to our 2nd anniversary. The same Red Willow Inn where I had reserved the best room they had, where we had slow danced in the empty courtyard because the singer took a break and we didn't want the night to end. Now it was just another hiding place for someone else's memory. There was no mention of me anywhere in their conversations. No husband to consider, no life already built. It was like I didn't exist. I don't remember setting the tablet down. I just remember staring at the wall across from me, feeling the weight of 8 years of marriage slowly, methodically breaking over me. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't doubt. It was fact. Cold, undeniable, ugly truth. When Emily came back later, swinging shopping bags in her hands and humming like she hadn't just ripped my world apart, I didn't say a word. I watched her move around the house, slipping back into her role so easily. Smiling, joking, acting like everything was normal. I wondered if she noticed the change in me. If she felt the way my smiles didn't quite reach anymore, the way my answers came just a little too fast, too flat. Probably not. When you're busy living your new life in secret, you stop noticing the details of the old one. That night, after she went to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table with the tablet in front of me. I didn't read more. I didn't need to. The messages were already burned into my mind, seared there like a brand. I thought about waking her up. About shoving the tablet in her face and demanding answers. But what would it change? What was there left to say? She had made her choice. Long before I ever saw the proof, she had already left me behind in every way that mattered. I sat there for hours, watching the shadows shift across the floor as the night dragged on. I thought about all the moments I had overlooked. The small betrayals. The casual lies. And worse, the way I had betrayed myself. Every time I ignored my instincts, every time I told myself love meant being blind, I had helped her build the walls that kept me out. It wasn't just her infidelity that broke us. It was my silence. The next morning, Emily found me sipping cold coffee at the kitchen table, still in the same clothes I'd worn the night before. She kissed my forehead absent-mindedly, like I was just another piece of furniture she had to pass on her way to her day. She didn't notice the way I flinched. She didn't notice anything at all. And maybe that was the clearest proof of all. I didn't confront her. I didn't throw accusations into the air or demand some tearful confession. There were no dramatic scenes, no shouting matches. That wasn't who I was. Maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe if I'd been louder, less trusting, less steady, we wouldn't have ended up here. But there was no point trying to rewrite the past. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I couldn't unknow what I now knew. Instead, I let the silence grow between us. It filled the spaces where our conversations used to live. It settled into the kitchen when we drank our coffee. It stretched out between us at night, a cold chasm under the covers. I moved through those days like a man who had already left, even though my body was still there. Emily busied herself with preparations for the charity gala her agency was hosting that Friday night. She talked about it constantly, what she was going to wear, how important it was for her career, how the right people were going to be there. She seemed nervous and excited at the same time, flitting around the house with a kind of manic energy, trying on dress after dress, asking my opinion and barely waiting for an answer before moving on. It wasn't lost on me that she never asked if I wanted to come with her. It was as if she had already written me out of the night's script, assuming I'd just stay home, like a good little shadow, while she played out whatever fantasy she'd been living behind my back. I could have stayed. I could have sat in the empty house, drinking alone, letting my imagination fill in the blanks with images too painful to bear. But no. I was done being the quiet ghost haunting the edges of her life. The morning of the gala, while Emily was showering, I found the invitation sitting on the kitchen counter. White cardstock. Elegant cursive. White Pine Lodge, 7 p.m. Formal attire required. I picked it up, studied it for a long moment, then slipped it into my jacket pocket. When she came downstairs later, dressed in a navy blue dress that hugged her figure in a way that should have made my heart race but instead left me feeling numb, she looked almost startled to see me pulling on my suit jacket. You're getting dressed up," she said, her voice pitching just slightly higher than usual. I smiled. A small, tight smile that didn't touch my eyes. "Thought I'd come with you. Big night, right?" For a heartbeat, she just stared at me, her mouth parting as if to protest. Then she closed it just as quickly, painting on that bright, camera-ready smile she wore so well. "Of course," she said. "It'll be fun." We drove in near silence to the lodge, the tension so thick between us I could almost taste it. She kept fussing with her hair in the visor mirror, adjusting her dress, checking her lipstick. I kept my eyes on the road. When we pulled up, the place was lit up like something out of a movie. White lights wrapped around every tree trunk. Valets in black suits whisked cars away with polished smiles. Inside, the ballroom gleamed under enormous chandeliers, the floor already crowded with women in glittering dresses and men in pressed tuxedos. Emily moved through the crowd like she belonged there. Smiling, laughing, touching arms lightly as she greeted people. She introduced me a few times. "This is my husband, Austin," but her hand on my arm felt distant, mechanical. Like I was an accessory she needed to complete the picture, nothing more. I watched her work the room, watched the way her eyes kept flicking toward the far side of the ballroom. Looking for someone. Waiting. I followed her gaze once, then again, and finally spotted him. Tall. Dark suit. Small pin on his lapel shaped like the letter R. He stood near the bar, chatting casually with another man, but every so often, his eyes drifted across the room, searching, just like hers. When their eyes finally met, it was like the world narrowed to just the two of them for a split second. A flash of recognition. A silent conversation passing between them in a glance. It wasn't longing, or even guilt. It was familiarity. Comfort. I wondered if anyone else noticed. Probably not. It was too quick, too practiced, too small to be seen unless you were already looking for it. But I was looking. And I saw it all. Emily excused herself soon after under the pretense of checking on the organizers. She kissed me on the cheek, habitual, hollow, and disappeared into the crowd. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I walked to the edge of the room, leaning against a tall marble column, and just watched. The music swelled. Glasses clinked. Laughter floated through the air. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, I felt something inside me go very, very still. I realized I wasn't angry. Not anymore. The grief had burned itself out days ago, leaving behind something quieter and sharper. A clarity that cut through all the what-ifs and whys. Emily could make whatever choices she wanted. And I could make mine, too. When she finally returned, weaving through the crowd with a champagne flute in her hand and a bright, brittle smile pasted across her face, she reached for me like nothing had happened. I let her fingers brush mine. Then I pulled my hand away. The look in her eyes, confusion, then fear, was the first real, unguarded emotion I'd seen from her in weeks. I didn't say a word. I simply turned and walked out of the ballroom, the cold night air slapping my face as I stepped outside. No one chased after me. No one called my name. The world kept spinning. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I was finally ready to let it. I drove home with the windows down, the cold night air biting into my skin. I wanted to feel it. Needed it, somehow, like a reminder that I was still alive, still real, even as everything else around me felt like it had turned to smoke. The road was nearly empty, just a few lonely headlights passing by in the opposite lane, and the mountains in the distance loomed like silent witnesses. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. Same bricks, same front porch, same porch light casting a warm glow onto the steps. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage set, an empty backdrop for a life that didn't exist. I sat there in the truck for a long time, engine off, hands resting on the wheel. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Maybe part of me thought she would come flying into the driveway, breathless and panicked, ready to explain it all away. To beg. To lie. To promise things she had no intention of keeping. But the driveway stayed empty. Finally, I got out, walked up the front steps, and unlocked the door. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the heater. I kicked off my shoes, tossed my jacket onto the arm of the couch, and stood there for a moment, letting the quiet settle around me like a second skin. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the stillness. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't reach for a beer or a book or anything else to fill the space. I just sat. An hour passed. Maybe two. At some point, my phone buzzed on the coffee table, lighting up the dark room with its screen. Her name. Again and again. I didn't answer. I watched the calls roll in and fade out, her desperation growing with each missed attempt. I didn't block her. I didn't turn the phone off. Let her sit with it. Sometime after midnight, there was a knock at the door. Sharp. Nervous. I stayed where I was for a few seconds, staring at the door like it was something foreign. Part of me wanted to ignore it. To let her knock and knock until she understood what silence really felt like. But curiosity won out. I stood, crossed the room, and opened the door. There she was. Emily stood on the front porch, clutching something in her hands, a cake box, by the looks of it. She wore the same navy dress from the gala, her makeup smudged around her eyes, her hair falling out of its careful updo. She looked smaller somehow, shrunken, like a child who had gotten lost and didn't know how to find her way home. "Austin," she said, her voice cracking on my name. "Please, can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, saying nothing. She held up the box like some kind of peace offering. I made this. I know it's stupid. But I didn't know what else to do. I glanced down at the cake. White frosting, shaky blue piping. "Still us?" It read. The question hovered there between us, more pathetic than hopeful. Still us? I wanted to laugh. Not the good kind of laugh either. The kind that catches in your throat and turns into something bitter before it can escape. Instead, I just shook my head. Her lip quivered. She stepped forward like she was going to come inside, but I didn't move. I didn't make room. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking completely now. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please, Austin, please don't give up on us. We can fix this. I'll do anything." The words tumbled out of her like a dam breaking. Promises. Apologies. Desperation. If she had said them 3 weeks ago, maybe they would have meant something. Maybe not. I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that the man she was begging for, the man who had once believed in her without question, was already gone. "I can't do this," I said quietly. "Not anymore." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Please," she whispered. "We're better than this. I'll change. I'll prove it." I stared at her for a long moment. Really stared. Not at the girl I had fallen in love with once upon a time. Not at the memories or the good times or the dreams we had built together. At the woman standing in front of me now. The woman who had carved a hollow space into our marriage and filled it with lies. And I knew, deep in my bones, that I didn't owe her anything anymore. Not forgiveness. Not another chance. Not another night spent waiting for her to remember who we used to be. Without a word, I stepped back inside and closed the door. Not slammed. Not locked with anger. Just closed. Firm. Final. On the other side, I heard her sob once, a raw, choked sound, and then the soft shuffle of her feet retreating down the steps. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't need to. I stood there in the entryway, staring at the door, feeling the stillness wrap itself around me again. It wasn't warm or comforting. Not yet. It was cold, and heavy, and lonely. But it was honest. And for the first time in a long, long time, it was mine. The next morning, the house felt cavernous, each empty room echoing with things unsaid. I packed in silence. Clothes first. Books. A few framed photos I couldn't quite bring myself to throw away but also couldn't imagine hanging again. Everything else I left behind, furniture, dishes, the heavy memories weighing down the walls. Emily texted twice. I didn't answer. I didn't block her either. Some things didn't deserve the energy of anger anymore. They deserved nothing at all. I moved into a small studio apartment on the outskirts of town. Bare floors, creaky stairs, a window that stuck when you tried to open it. It wasn't much. But it was mine. That first night, I lay on a lumpy mattress on the floor, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. No soft breathing beside me. No phantom weight on the other side of the bed. Just me. It hurt. But it was a clean hurt. An honest hurt. Loneliness came like a tide at first. Thick. Heavy. Drowning. I woke up some mornings forgetting where I was, reaching across the bed out of habit, feeling that cold emptiness slapped me awake. But over time, the sharpness dulled. I started running again. Reading old novels that had gathered dust on our forgotten shelves. I bought a cheap second-hand camera and took long drives into the mountains, capturing quiet landscapes that didn't ask anything from me. One rainy afternoon, I wandered into a tiny coffee shop tucked between two brick buildings downtown. The place smelled like old wood and fresh pastries. It was nearly empty, just a few people hunched over laptops. And her, Haley. She sat by the window, paint-stained hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug, her wild hair tucked into a messy braid. She caught me staring and smiled. Not the polished, calculated kind of smile. The real kind. Like she didn't care who was watching. We started talking about nothing. About the rain. About her art. About how bad the coffee was if you ordered anything but black. Her laugh was reckless, unfiltered. It wasn't about being charming. It wasn't about impressing. It just was. Over time, those conversations grew into something steady. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just real. I didn't tell her much about Emily at first. Some ghosts take longer to speak about than others. But Haley never pushed. She just listened. One evening, sitting on a bench overlooking the river, Haley asked me, very simply, "Are you happy?" I thought about it for a long time. About the life I had built and lost. About the lies, the silences, the nights spent pretending everything was okay. About the nights now, still lonely sometimes, but honest. I looked at her, at the smudge of blue paint on her wrist, at the way she watched the water like it was enough just to be there. "I'm getting there," I said. And for once, it was the truth. In the end, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making Emily regret anything. It wasn't even about erasing the past. It was about choosing myself. Finally. Quietly. Steadily. It was about building a life that didn't need anyone's permission to exist. A life that didn't beg for love or attention. A life that stood solid on its own 2 feet. I lost a lot in those months. But in losing her, I found something better. I found me.